The eclipse on the 21st. This is the first eclipse apparently in 99 years that is visible in the USA from coast to coast. It's a total solar eclipse. And the more total the eclipse is, whether it's solar or lunar, and the more visible it is from your location, the more powerful it's considered to be energetically or esoterically. So this one's really powerful for that reason. There are arguments as to where the fixed star Regulus is. So Regulus, for most of the last long time has been right around 29 Leo, so right here in the eclipse chart. Some people say it crossed into Virgo in 2012. On my calculations, when I did the annual rate of motion and added it all up, it put it at 29, 59, and a half arc minute of Leo. So just a sliver from being into Virgo. But there's an orb of a couple degrees with the fixed star. So it's either right, Regulus is either right at the end of Leo, start of Virgo. And just as a reminder, that's one of the three most visible stars from the Northern Hemisphere. Regulus has a very good kind of reputation as far as, because most of the fixed stars are, it's one of those things where it's why am I even studying this? Because everything I read in this book is just horribly negative, And the fixed star astrology, it can be pretty dark, and I think you have to take it a little bit with a grain of salt. However, there are examples in history, of Regulus kind of promoting people. So Ali asked me a question about that, and King Charles I has the same ascendant as Donald Trump, officially. So his brother, he was the younger brother, and so his brother Edward, I think, should have been the king, but he either died or was killed. Charles became the king. He was rather autocratic and tried to expand the powers of the the royalty, and eventually was beheaded. So, let that be a lesson to all of you Ascendant conjunct Regulus people. And the thing with Regulus is, John Frawley, who's my favorite traditional astrologer, and this guy is kind of, so let's see, so you can't see this. Help, there we go. Okay, so this is not my favorite book by him, The Real Astrology. He writes a lot about horary astrology, which is the astrology of asking a specific question. But it's still a good book. He just goes way too far into bashing modern astrologers. But that's how he made his name, and he's really good at what he does. So Frawley says that, Regulus is kind of like having the trump card. So if it comes down to two people that are equally in line for the throne or for the job or whatever, the person with a strong Regulus conjunction, sun or ascendant conjunct the fixed star Regulus, is going to be the one who gets it, because that's the star of kings. It's this regal, royal kind of very Leo type energy. So one of the things that, I learned in my research in the last couple of weeks is that I think that's one reason that Trump ended up being either elected or installed or whatever as president. I'm going to show you some crazy stuff, though, that I think is going to convince you that he's definitely meant to be there, at least for now. So this eclipse, going back to the eclipse, that's one of the things also that makes it really powerful, because it is, the eclipse is in line with one of those fixed stars, and it pulls that fixed star energy into the world, basically. So Regulus, again, it's mostly good. It's of the nature of Mars and Jupiter combined. So Mars, action, aggression, will, assertiveness, anger, killing, swords, guns, and Jupiter, expansion, benevolence, when it's working well, but can also be kind of fundamentalist in its assertion of the truth. But generally positive, except in cases where there's too much hubris, where the person lets, like King Charles, lets the position go to their head and says, I'm the king, I should be able to do whatever I want, regardless of what Parliament says. And in that case, it can lead to a sudden and kind of brutal downfall or disgrace. So when we look at Trump's chart with the eclipse chart, so again, with these biwheels, this is Trump's ascendant, and these are his planets on the inside. And somebody asked me if this is confusing, because I want you guys to be able to understand the biwheels. It's one of the easiest ways of kind of looking at two charts together. So you just look at the ascendant here, 2958 Leo, and the midheaven, 2421 Taurus. And then we go back over here, and that's Trump's ascendant and midheaven. And his sun, node, Uranus are in the 10th house right here. We go back to the biwheel. You see his sun, node, Uranus are in the 10th house, same place. And then the eclipse ascendant, is going to vary depending on where you set the chart for. If we put it in Washington, D.C., the ascendant is 4.5 Sagittarius. So what the biwheel does is it takes 4.5 Sagittarius and it puts it in the house where Trump's chart has 4.5. I'm going to go ahead and just kind of go right into the looking at these two. And just if you have questions about the eclipse itself, please jump in and we can talk about like, how's this going to affect me, or what's going on with this aspect or whatever. Actually, I'll backtrack and just say one thing that's kind of interesting about this eclipse is it forms a grand trine with Uranus. So it's in what's called partile. Partile means it's in the same degree. So the eclipse is 28 Leo, 52 arc minutes. Uranus is 28 Aries, 23 arc minutes. So that's a really, really powerful trine. One of the things that we would expect from this is that wherever Aries is in your chart, or for example, in the USA's chart, there's going to be some Uranus type upheaval, anxious, jittery, but then leading to some kind of breakthrough or innovation. And it would seem to be ultimately positive, what comes out of this. Although Uranus in a way can function sort of like eclipses. It just brings these huge amounts of energy into the system, and it's like higher level, like faster moving energy than we normally are dealing with. And so it's very disruptive, but it's ultimately trying to disrupt, to break up stale patterns, to break up conservative kind of habits and things like that. And then this is a looser trine here because the eclipse is 7 degrees past Saturn and Black Moon Lilith, but it still counts as a trine. We give an orb of 10 degrees for the sun and moon. And with this eclipse being so powerful, you could probably even give it a few more degrees. So basically that kind of links these three. And Saturn and Black Moon Lilith and Sagittarius, the negative side of that would be an increase in fundamentalism, so the fundamentalists kind of channeling that Black Moon Lilith anger and rage and vengeance kind of energy, the lower octave of that energy. Okay, so Lilith and Sag, becoming aware of how we've been victimized, or how certain groups in society have been victimized by the truth, with a capital T, by, like an example would be, even in a broader sense, the constant American imperative for more. We always have to be building. We have to sell more of our product. We always have to be growing. And obviously the way the world is right now, that's not a sustainable kind of way of doing things. And it has many, many consequences and many victims, globally and in the U.S. And then Saturn and Sag says, hey, whoa, let's put the brakes on all this Sagittarian exuberance and optimism, and let's structure it, so that it can be sustainable. So I feel like this eclipse, ultimately, it should be, I think everything that's happening is positive in an eternity kind of perspective. This eclipse is what's it gonna do? It's gonna represent the end of an old cycle, right? Relating to his persona, to his physical vitality, his health, his character, his appearance. So these are all some of the signifiers of the first house, which is like the house of self and of identity, because it's hitting, within a degree, basically exact conjunction on his ascendant. It's also opposite his part of fortune in Aquarius. And when we get to the US chart, we're going to see that again. So, that in and of itself isn't really enough to tell us. We know something's going to change with him, right? And it's probably going to be pretty major because this is a pretty powerful eclipse and it's making a direct hit to his ascendant, loose hit to his Mars. It's opposite his part of fortune. Something is going to change, but we don't really know what. Now, the fact that Regulus is sitting here and that he's obviously, been abusing power and, there's a lot of hubris, a lot of self-aggrandizement going on and not really caring about the subjects, his royal subjects, right? So we could say, well, that might bring, the possibility of a downfall at least. I think this is such a powerful eclipse is going to have a resonance of at least a year, which and so be interesting to just kind of watch what happens when, there's a transiting planet that's in the last 2 degrees of Leo, Taurus, Scorpio, Aquarius, because I think this will be remain a hot spot for quite a while. So the other thing that, really jumped out at me when I first was looking at this chart is Saturn and Black Moon Lilith on the day of the eclipse, at the time of the eclipse, are 3 arc minutes, so 1/20th of a degree from an exact conjunction, and Saturn's retrograding back towards Lilith. And look at the degrees, so 21 degrees, basically 10 arc minutes. His moon, 21 degrees, 12 arc minutes. So, that's just a direct hit. His nodes are half a degree from there. And then you pull in the sun and Uranus. If you take the midpoint of those two, which is just how far, what's the middle point between the two of them? That's right in there as well. So it's this whole part, sun, the self, his energy, who he is, his life, moon, his foundations, his emotional security, etc. The moon's the ruler of Cancer, so it has influence over Saturn or Mercury, Saturn, and Venus. You put all of that together and it kind of pulls in almost all the houses of his chart. I feel like that's going to be, there's something major that's going to go on with that.
I just had a quick question about the news conference. So do you see anything in here that would sort of indicate that it was really a turning point?
Well, I think that so the fact that this is where, so let's go back to the eclipse.
Because it just seems so crazy that, it just seemed to happen right on schedule, sort of right in between the 2 eclipses. And I happened to watch it as it was happening, which was a total fluke because I never really watched CNN in the middle of the day. And it was just crazy. I don't know if anybody else happened to see it, but it was, there was just something about it. Not that there was anything, we learned anything new, about him, but he just kind of came out and said where he stands on white supremacists, and it was just wow. And everybody's kind of been freaking out ever since, but I don't know, maybe they're, it's it'll just sort of wash over.
I think it's one of many small turning, not small, but, small turning points. But if we look at, the thing that's interesting is that we've already got, so we're close to the eclipse, and Saturn and Lilith both move slowly, but they're in the position that they'll be in the eclipse.
Uh-huh.
And the fact that is on the ascendant,
right?
That there's the tell right there. When you're looking at events like Hurricane Katrina or the 9/11 bombings, the ascendant is going to be one of the most important places in the chart, because that's going to kind of put you at ground zero. The ascendant is the degree of the zodiac that's being activated in that local time, local place at that time, right? So for instance, if we did this at the same time in San Francisco, we'd have the planets in the same places, but a totally different ascendant. So the ascendant is really important in event astrology. You can see down here, so this is the ascendant for his press conference. So that's kind of the representing the press conference itself. Whenever you have planets conjunct the ascendant in an event chart or otherwise, they form a partnership. So they become like you can think of the ascendant as like the personality or the appearance, you know, the manifestation of the person, or in this case we're almost looking at the news conference as a person. So this becomes a major, you know, it's interwoven into the personality of the event, you know, the energy of the event. So Black Moon, Lilith, Saturn, and Sag, you know, again, I just feel like this person is being used, you know, to bring things out into the light. I mean, that's what Black Moon Lilith does, right? She activates this healing, hopefully healing anger, fierceness, you know, cleansing rage that comes up and releases all this repressed stuff from the unconscious. And then Saturn and Sagittarius is really trying to rein in it. I like the fiery, I've got a lot of fire, so I resonate with the exuberance and the optimism. But Sagittarius can also be the person who's just relentlessly telling you how they're right and what you should be doing differently. And, you know, if everybody, it's kind of like the fire version of Virgo in its extreme manifestation. So it can be very fundamentalist. It can be like the preacher. And Saturn, as he travels through Sag over 2.5 years, is really trying to say, okay, look, let's channel all of this energy into something structured and therefore useful and sustainable. I mean, this is just so crazy. You know, and it's like what we looked at, I think, last week. You know, this is like Trump's, I mean, in so many ways, it's what defines him, you know, is this, again, coming from the past life karmic pattern, you know, the template that he walks into this life with is whatever I'm feeling, moon, Sag, fire. So moon and Sag, it's not going to stop and, you know, analyze its feelings or grieve over sadness or whatever. It's just going to try to channel it into some big action, you know, some big, exciting, inspirational thing. So whatever I'm feeling, whatever I'm, you know, fired up about, it just comes out over here, you know, and like super Gemini ADD